in places like Times Square and the Obama campaign stadium in Chicago, crowds of people cheering and laughing and dancing and crying with joy over these results. Now, and these are people who will have to live with the consequences of this election the longest. And I think it's worth asking, what is it exactly that they're cheering? What do they believe? Why are they cheering? What do they believe that brings them to cheer and cry and be so overjoyed? They must believe that their future is bright, that it's been saved from the ravages of evil, that it's been saved from the uncaring racist and homophobic Republicans with that rich white vulture of a weird cult at the top of the ticket. Well, their free education, free student loans, free health care, including contraception and abortion services, are now secure. The fact that so many college graduates can't find work today is George Bush's fault. Circumstances will be resolved by the policies and procedures of the Obama administration. What do they believe about Republicans? They must believe that the 48% of Americans, half of the country, hate women and gays and minorities, and would force all women to have invasive ultrasounds and gays to be burned next to witches and blacks sent to the back of the bus, if not back to the cotton fields. They must believe that Ron Paul wishes to commit a Texas Chainsaw Massacre style entitlement cuts on all entitlement programs. And they're counting on those programs, who will now be solvent with no sacrifice required on their part. Somebody's going to pay the bill, but it won't be them. And the government's coming out and saying all of these things are free. Let me tell you, folks, nothing is free. I said this the other day. Every day that I get every week that I get a paycheck, that's a bill for these. When I pay my taxes, I'm paying for this. This is not free. And I know some of these, maybe some of you are saying, well, it's free to me. Yeah, well, it's not free to me, and I'm not getting any of the benefits. So what do they believe about America's role in the world? They must believe that a foreign policy of apologizing for American pluralism or imperialism or bowing to Saudi kings or supplicating for a reset of relations with Russia is leading to things like Benghazi. What happened there? Throwing Israel under the bus. You know, I had a story and some sound clips of that very thing, where in Chicago at the celebration, Obama supporters were singing a song of goodbye to the Jews, saying that now that Obama's got a second term, there will be no more Israel. Goodbye, Jews. Goodbye, Jews. Well, did anybody ever see the movie Schindler's List? Well, in the movie Schindler's List, when they first started gathering the Jews together, the Germans, the Nazis, were lined up on the streets. And as the Jews were being marched out of town, they stood on the side of the road. And as the Jews walked by, that's exact words that they said in this movie. Goodbye, Jews. Goodbye, Jews. Well, that's what these supporters of Obama are saying. Why are they chanting and singing and saying goodbye to the Jews? Because no matter what the media says, no matter what Obama says, he's made it very clear through his actions, because remember, you can say anything, but the proof is in the pudding. He has proven through his actions that he is anti-Israel. And they believe now that he has his second term. It's goodbye, Jews. That's why they're so bold as to be out here singing their song. So they must believe in this foreign policy. They must believe in everything that's throwing Israel under the bus and completely inadequate, I guess is the only good word to say about about Iran's nuclear ambitions? What about China's expanding Pacific Navy? What about the global jihad network and the rest of the geopolitics for the next 4 to 40 years? I think they have the attitude, as long as we don't have a warmongering president with an itchy trigger finger looking for another Iraq to invade, it's all good. They must believe that it's a good thing for Obama to have greater flexibility with Russia and Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood. They have to believe that the United Nations is a greater force for good in the world than America. That America's exceptionalism should be subordinated to the international community. What do they believe about economic issues? This is huge. What little economics they've been spoon-fed in our schools and universities must have been Keynesian, whereby all good things come from government. Nothing good comes from greedy capitalists, you one percenters. The fact that the federal government consumes a higher percentage of the GDP today than at any other time since World War II. And they don't see it as a problem, because government tax revenue and spending is what brings about prosperity, right? They must believe that it was the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that bankrupted the nation. That fat cat pure capitalist bankers caused a financial crisis by relining minority communities. That increased social spending like Obamacare is a positive. They must believe that entitlements and unfunded benefit pensions and liabilities for unionized government employees are great things. They must be honored above all rights and be put above private sector taxpayers. And the federal deficit and the national debts are, I don't know what they believe on that. They're the ones that are going to pay for it, them and their kids. They have to believe that there are 50 million people in America without access to health care who now get it free of charge with no impact on anybody else. That they can get unemployment that comes from somewhere, who knows? It falls from the sky, nobody pays for it, it's free for them. And it's difficult to tell what they believe about socialism or communism and capitalism, because it's doubtful that they have any real understanding of the significance of any of those. What are the histories of the nations that have attempted to implement all of those things, and of the people who've lived under them? If they possessed any understanding at all of socialism, they would deny socialism outright. If they would just look at the principles of the European political parties that have no qualms about using these words in their names, they would see what the truth is. But they have no understanding of these things. Maybe they're not terribly concerned with any of these things, because espousing a purely self-interested point of view, they have the expectation of being on the inside, of having government careers or belonging to unions whose power will insulate them from having government crisis or cuts in salaries, and they'll have great job security and pensions, and they'll be protected from any general economic conditions as long as they hold off attacks by barbarians like Scott Walker or Chris Christie. They do not blame the United Auto Workers for the economic devastation of Detroit, but instead they seem to celebrate its clout in the auto bailout. They do not blame collective bargaining on the part of the employees whose salaries are paid by taxpayers for the bankruptcy of Michigan or New Jersey or California. Or they don't care. I don't know. I just don't know what these people are thinking. Clearly, they they've been indoctrinated. They've been indoctrinated since kindergarten, and now this indoctrination has got a full generation. And when we've talked about these last days in the past, since 1960-61, when prayer was taken out of school, moral crimes have doubled and sometimes tripled every year since then. Every year since then. Moral crimes being things that goes against God's will. Fornication, adultery, homosexuality, all of these things. And for a long time I've wanted to be very frank about homosexuality, to look at it for what it really is. And I've been hesitant to do that because if we were just internet radio alone, I would probably not hesitate to say it the way it is. But because we have regular broadcast affiliates on regular broadcast radio affiliates across the country, I have refrained from doing that because I want them to be able to broadcast the program without censoring it, which is, I'm sure, what would happen. I don't want that to happen. So maybe I'll find a way in the future to be a little more diplomatic about. But the reality of it is pretty stark. So when it comes to things like this, the fundamental change in this country, we are now not what we used to be. And I want to look at this in political and spiritual light. Because the only way to really get through this is to know what's most important. And what's most important is to understand what the last days mean. And to understand that the things of this world are going to pass away. But your relationship with God would never pass away. If your relationship is real, I want to give you a couple verses here. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, 4 through 6, it says, "But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. You are all the children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night, not of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep, as do others, but let us watch and be sober." And that doesn't mean sober as in not drinking. That means sober as in open your eyes and see what's going on around you. Romans 13 says, "And that, knowing the time, that now is a high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. The night is far spent. The day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light." My friends, this is the time to get right with your Maker. This is the time. If you're one of these people who have always said, someday maybe I'll do that or I'll explore that, now is the time. If you ever had any inclination to come to God, to come to Christ, to start this relationship, now is the time. Don't wait until it's too late. You're being warned. Don't wait until it's too late. The result of the recent U.S. elections is not surprising to Bible believers who know the spiritual condition of America. We should not respond as unbelievers and heretics, and nominal Christians respond to these confusing, frustrating times. A lot of people are in despair. They're frantically trying to find a safe haven for their wealth. But we are not Christians in name only. We are born again by God's Spirit, and we walk in the light of God's infallible Word. We know the times, or at least we should. We understand the underlying spiritual fundamental